Guys, check out this Raggedy that I got from Austin Creative Reuse that is almost identical to the one that I'm already working on. So I think I have a sibling for this one. Hello friends, we're doing this a little bit differently today because I did not have a voice when I recorded this. So we're going to try a voiceover. If you don't enjoy that, you can just mute me and watch the captions. As you can see here, I'm checking the doll for burst seams, for dry rot, to see what kind of damage we have. Got a little stain on the bottom. It was like just a little chalky sort of thing. A couple of little seams that were split. But the primary thing with this little doll was staining. As you can see, I'm checking the hair. I did pull on it several times in several places, and while it was matted and it was really dirty, the hair was, it was fine. It was not dry rotted at all. So it just needed to be cleaned up. The stain is obviously very significant. This is a doll I bought at Austin Creative Reuse. I paid about $2 for it and decided it was worth an effort to try to save it. Just like my last video where I talked about cleaning a doll, I used OxiClean Max to pre-treat the stain to hopefully remove some of it. If I were to do this again, I think I would have washed this doll first just to see what would come out before I pre-treated it. I've never done that before, but I've also never dealt with a stain quite like this. After working on it for about a week, I decided this was probably coffee, tea, something like that. I already sort of suspected that. It didn't have a smell anymore, so it's pretty clear this was a really old stain. I did apply the OxiClean quite liberally because I was absolutely sure that whatever this was down in the polyfill. Again, I probably should have washed her first, but this is a first for me to deal with something quite this dirty. This doll was probably a Raggedy Ann. You can see the little bloomers there. I ended up washing those and then putting them aside because I decided this doll would go really nicely with the Raggedy Ann that you guys have seen in my previous videos. They're the same size, they're the same pattern, and even though some of the fabric's different and the hair is a little bit different, I think that they are just fine for fraternal twins. I did do quite a bit of rubbing in of the OxiClean to try to help these stains as much as humanly possible. And yeah, I think I used probably a third of a bottle of my OxiClean on this guy, but again, I think it's worth it. I'm a big fan of trying to rescue these Raggedy's. I want to give them a second life, and if I can get them clean, then that is a really good start. I did go back and do a little bit of extra scrubbing in the hair. There was some of whatever the stain was in the hair, but as you will see later, it did come out. Here we turn this little doll into a burrito. I have these little towels. They were really bath mats that I like to use for them. They're thick and I can spray them on there, and then we wait. Here's one day later. I was checking every day just to see how the stain was improving, and you can see that it is fading a little bit. It continues to fade, and I was checking front and back each time. I didn't take a photo each time. I got to this point 5 days later and decided to go ahead and give it a wash, and you can see a lot of the stain has come out, but not as much as I would like. So I went ahead and added more OxiClean, and this is the next day, and again, the stain is fading, but it's still pretty obvious that there's a stain here. So at this point, I decided it was time to try something new, and I headed to my grocery store, and I bought this Carbona Stain Devil. It is a coffee, tea, wine, and juice remover. I'm almost positive this was a coffee stain. I can't be sure, but just based on my own experience with dyeing, with stains, with coffee and with tea, I figured as much. It did get a lot of the stain out almost immediately, so I let it soak a little bit longer. And by a couple hours later, this is what we had. I then washed the doll, and at this point, I tried another product called White Bright. Unfortunately, I based the decision on reviews. It did lighten somewhat, but it also stripped one of the eyes of color, and it faded the stripes on the legs. So here I am adding some of the same yarn that I used for my Raggedy Ann because I want these to be twins. So I just filled in a few blank spots, trimmed it up, and there you go. There they are. They will be fraternal twins when I am done with them. It's a pretty good before and after. I'm really pleased with the result. We have a little yellowing, but I think he is ready for a second life. I had a couple minor repairs. The arm had a little split, which I hand stitched together, as you can see here. And then we're going to move on, and I have to add the heart. The heart was missing on this one as well. Both this doll and the last doll I showed you did not have a heart. I mentioned in my last video that my transfers don't transfer anymore because they are from the 1980s and they're completely dried out. So I used a friction pin to add this heart, and I go into detail about just a little bit more mending and repair for my last Raggedy video, which you can find under Raggedy Rescues on my YouTube channel. I've created a whole playlist for you guys that are just the tutorials. There's a separate playlist that is pretty much everywhere I've ever talked about a Raggedy Ann or Andy, just in case that's something you're interested in. I know this is a weird hobby, but I enjoy it. I get a lot of joy out of being able to take these dolls and give them a second life. When I started stitching on this little heart, I got to the LO and then realized that I had stitched my O a little bit too wide, and I had to go back and redraw part of the heart. But this friction pin, the red thread covers it just fine, but also you can just rub it out with the heat of your fingers if you need to. And I've had really good luck with it. Here's me drawing those letters back in and then just going back in and starting all over again. I do use like a little locking stitch when I start. That's why you see the thread sticking out the side there. And then once I get the piece done, I will trim off that excess. I did, as I said, I did have to stop and start over a little bit, and you saw it there. But I used a back stitch on this and it worked out just fine. I'm really pleased with the way it looks, and I'm just glad he has a heart. That's a little secret for the person who owns the doll, but it's such a sweet thing to have, just to, you know, if you're changing doll clothes or whatever, to have the little I love you, and it's pretty iconic. So I just really want to make sure that they have that on them. Getting pretty close to being done here because this little guy did not need much in the way of mending once he was clean. That was the primary thing. You can see the yellowing there a little bit, but once he's dressed, most of that will be under his clothes. And I think it's okay. He has a little character. Here is the gray thread. I was matching the shoes because they had faded a lot because, again, of the white bright. And I opted to not change out his legs. I just decided that's part of his story now. So I just did some overlapping whip stitches. I think I ended up doing 4 little columns here to make sure that that little hole was closed up and mended properly. I think I even did a little bit more after I finished recording here. And that's it. That was all the mending he needed. That's his before and after. I think he looks amazing. Even though we did have a little fading, I am super glad that I was able to get him as clean as I did. You guys have a wonderful week. Have a crafty week. I hope you stop by for Talk to Me Tuesday on Tuesday, and I will see you with the next Raggedy Rescue.